And sometimes I would say we usually have a lot of people sign up and then not that many people come because we say that we don't share the recording unless you sign up.
Oh, well, that's good.
The little tidbit we do. So if anyone's watching this, we share it every time with everyone. But yeah, I love this topic. And we're actually going to talk about drop boxes a little bit, which is pretty
Oh, that is
cool.
cool.
Yeah, we're not sharing everything, obviously, like the proprietary stuff, but you can see their like layout.
Yeah. We're just having such a, well, it's a perpetual problem to hire people, but I know we have such good people and they are very happy. And I know if we just got the word out more, and that
Yeah,
requires us, you know, chanting the fight song internally a whole bunch more than we actually do.
totally. And I think Beth just saying like, so this obviously this whole presentation is about like what's the unique offering? Like what is the like, just like you have a point of difference. That's totally
Hmm.
what it is. It's your point of difference as an employer.
Right,
What is
right.
it?
Yeah.
Like I would say for us, we are trying to do like have a career you love and a life you love on your own terms.
Yeah.
But what
Yeah.
does that look like?
Yeah.
Like, and
Ours
you
would be
can't,
like,
on your own terms is pretty ambiguous and obviously also can't be literally on your own terms.
correct. Right. Yeah. Ours would be like, it's a minimum wage job, but that won't exploit you.
Yeah. Which, like, I think there is something so cool about being like really open and direct about what you are. You know what I mean? Like Amazon,
Yeah.
they're pretty open about like this is a grind factory.
Yeah.
Or
Yeah.
like I've heard Elon Musk, people say, I love this story I heard about him. Like people say that was the most unique experience of my life and I would never work for him again. I don't know that it's bad to say you would never work for him again. There's no like
Yeah.
right or wrong way. It's basically just like, was he clear about that when you joined? Then that's all we need.
Right. Right.
Like, did you know it was going to be tough? Then I think he did a good job of managing the employer brain.
Yeah.
If it was a bait and switch, is I think what people will
Right.
reject you for. Yeah.
Right. Yeah. Yeah. I mean, there's just like, lots of minimum wage jobs there's lots of drama there, or
Yeah.
there's super bad, really strict rules. They don't treat people like humans, but we're like, no, no, we're happy for you to come here and we're grateful that you're here. We can't
Yeah.
pay you $70,000 a year to pack boxes, but you still deserve health insurance. You still deserve to
Yeah.
have a day off if you're sick. Like, that's all fine.
Someone, that other person we worked with, Beth, that was like in this space too, he was really trying to put together some packages around like how do we help people grow,
Yeah.
and what
Yeah.
growth, what do they want to see? Like, for example, someone who might have never had financial education, can you provide some type of like, hey, we're going to do a lunch and learn on 401k?
Hmm.
I'm sure you probably
Hmm.
already do that stuff. They kind of like that idea of
Yeah.
knowing who your audience is and then serving them
Yeah.
specifically.
Yeah. Exactly. Thank you so much.
Okay. Okay, well, I think we'll get started. So thank you, Steve Graham, for coming again. Okay, so we are talking today about building an employer value proposition in 2025. And a big part of this is what's the difference between employer brand and employer value proposition. So this is going to be pretty short, I think, and then I would love to just discuss. That's where I think the best info comes is when we're able to discuss this as a group. So hopefully you'll feel comfortable sharing. Please let me know if for some reason you don't want the portion, like, if you say something vulnerable and you don't want it shared, no problem. We can chop out that part when we post this online. So just a refresher, my name's Kristen Graham Brown, and I'm the owner of Hoot Design Company, and we are a culture-driven branding agency. And the way we approach brand is really through this lens of your customers will never love you until your employees love you first. That's a Simon Sinek quote. I wish I could take credit for that. When I heard that, I thought that was the most beautiful illustration of how we approach brand. It really has to come from the inside out. And it is so much more than your logo and your tagline. Our entire process is built on this premise, and this is our methodology, which is brand is the being, marketing is the doing. And our process is called the brand being methodology, which is really the beginning of how to build an employer brand. We would start there. Even if you came to us for just employer brand, we would start with letting somebody in. We would start with brand being. Quick overview of brand being. I know so many of you guys have been here for multiple webinars, which I really appreciate. I will quickly say brand being starts with brand heart. And for us, brand heart is your vision, your purpose, and your values. Without knowing that, it would be very hard to build an employer brand and very hard to build an EVP, which is an employer value proposition. So let's get into specifically what we're here to talk about today, which is the employer value proposition, or EVP, might be another way you've heard this. It's a unique set of offerings, associations, and values that an employer provides to employees in exchange for their contributions. It's essentially what an employee gains by working for a particular company. And it encompasses everything from compensation, benefits, to career development and company culture. So this is your point of difference. At the best way to say this is your point of difference as an employer. So you would say, work here, not over here. Why should I do that? We want to have a very intentional framework around that. We don't want that to happen organically, because it will, right? Culture happens organically. And culture is kind of the behaviors that we're willing to accept. So let's create those intentionally. Let's create benefits intentionally so that we can recruit the right people. Your brand for customers and for employees, this is so critical, needs to repel as much as it draws in. So I was just talking to Beth before everybody jumped on about there's no right or wrong way to do this. Like Elon Musk, I just heard this story about Elon Musk that it was on a podcast I was listening to, that people say they would never want to work for him again. Now, they also say it was the most unique and transformative employee experience of their life. So it's not necessarily bad. Like there's nothing wrong with I think he has kind of a perspective that everyone's replaceable. You feel a need for him right now in this whatever we're building at the moment, and you are in some ways expendable. That's not necessarily a bad approach. It just needs to be intentional that you know that as you're coming on board to his team. So there's no bait and switch. Bait and switch is the worst thing that could happen when it comes to employer brands specifically. So we want to say, work here, not over there. And this is what you can expect from us. And we're going to be intentional about setting up that scaffolding. So the difference between employer brand and EVP is really just, if you zoom out, we're talking employer brand. And if you zoom in, we're talking about employer value proposition. So for example, when I say zoom out to look at your whole brand, is very different than saying, what's your point of difference? Right? That's just one aspect to the entire brand ecosystem. Same thing here. Your employer brand is what is all of these things. And employer value proposition is your point of difference. Also, it must be authentic and proven. So this is not where we're aspirational. It's one thing to be aspirational with your brand, like, for example, Hoot went through this our own transition of this when we knew that our client was up leveling. Our client was going from spending 5 or 10K to spending 20 or 30K. Our visuals needed to up level at the same time. And we had to deliver on that promise of what people expected to experience. When it comes to employer brand, you want to be really careful that this is not aspirational. If we can't walk the talk, we're going to have a major problem. And you're going to get there are a lot more implications and consequences for that versus saying like, wow, I expected this brand to be luxury because of the font and the color palette I saw on the website. Turns out it's not. Obviously, that erodes trust, but it doesn't erode trust in the same way that it does with an employee who feels that there was a bait and switch. Does that make sense? So here we have your brand being in the center. I feel very strongly that everyone should start with a brand being. And the beginning of brand being is brand heart. We have lots of webinars about this. And at the end, we're also going to give you access to our workbook where you can answer some of these questions of what is our purpose? What is our vision? What are our values? The perception is really the brand personality and the positioning. So, how do people perceive you is obviously a huge part of the employer brand. For example, who takes a big stand when it comes to women in the workplace? We, on our homepage, we have a maternity shop where you can purchase goods that directly support maternity leave. So like I'm telling you, I'm giving you a lot of cues about what we believe in straight out of the gate. Your compass is your brand heart. So again, purpose, vision, and values drives all of our decision making. Culture and behavior is, the culture we build is the behavior we're willing to accept. Do we lean into our core values? Do we walk the talk with our core values? I believe core values are the place to start with culture building. And that's how we hold people accountable to the behavior we want to see. That's how we repel the wrong people. I go pretty hard on this in an interviewing process by saying, laying out there what are our values and what are our expectations around that. And I really want to try and vet someone who might not be a good fit. Oh, something that I do is say, we see work and life like this. They're very integrated. It is important to me to offer you the flexibility to take a meeting in the middle of the day or an appointment, to be there for your kids the way that you want to show up. And it's also important that you bring that flexibility back to me. Sometimes we have to text you at 7 p.m. when we're on deadline, Again, we're being really transparent about that out of the gate. So, a refresher on how do we get to a strong employer brand? We're going to start with values, vision, sorry, a typo there, and purpose, which is your brand heart. The EVP, what we include when we help people with EVP is the promise, the value proposition, the brand pillars, and the proof points. And I'm going to actually show you what this looks like. So this is the work that we did for Dropbox. I'm blurring out some of their proprietary info, but this one-sheeter is informing everything that they're doing for they actually have a team called the Talent Brand Team, whose job is to recruit and retain good talent from a 10,000 foot view. So they also have, of course, they have recruiters, they have HR, but Talent Brand, their job is to specifically manage the brand impression of Dropbox as an employer. And you've really seen this have a huge uptick since COVID. Really, since the working world, was turned on its head, there's a lot more companies investing in an actual team. This is all they do. So the promise, and imagine the layers that this had to go through to be approved. Imagine the revisions that happened to make sure that we were all on the same page within their team mostly. So the promise is own your impact at Dropbox. We are committing to you that you will have impact that ends up impacting millions of users worldwide. Your employee experience is crafted with the same care we bring to our products. With the autonomy of a startup and the opportunities of global enterprise, you can be who you are and grow into who you're meant to be. Here, you own your impact to make work more intuitive, joyful, and human for you as a Dropboxer and for hundreds of millions of people worldwide. What are the 3 brand pillars that ladder up to this promise? So basically, how do we deliver on that promise? And that's what these brand pillars are: experimentation, craft, and community. Community, I will tell you, went through lots of revisions. So at one point that was belonging. As things have changed with DEI, so has some of this communication, as you can imagine. So that's what these things are, very intentional. So experimentation is redefined possibility. We want people to work here who want to have an impact. We don't want people who want to clock in and clock out. And this is really critical to Dropbox because they are a virtual environment. They were one of the first companies to be virtual first. They were prior to COVID. They're 100% virtual team. So they need to make sure that they are intentionally attracting people who are not trying to surf and get paid, but who actually want to create impact at a company of this size. Then these proof points I think are very important. How are we actually backing up what we're saying that we're doing, right? Craft, unlock your potential. So, how are we actually showing people that they get to, be masters of their craft? And then lastly, community is about building connections. How do we prove that we are here to build connections? They invest heavily in offsites, which are very expensive. But it's something that they believe in so that they have, very strong human connection, even though they're spread across the entire world. Virtual first, this was something that we had to really massage because it's an amplifier, and they want to be clear that it is an amplifier, it's not leading. So we're not leading any communication with we're virtual first, because again, we don't want to be attracting people who want to surf and get paid. And then this key message, we're shaping the future of distributed work because we're living it. So we're all in on being virtual first, and Dropbox is a product that specifically supports asynchronous distributed work. Who better to deliver that product than people who live that every day?
So, do you want interruptions or wait till the end?
Oh no, please ask. I would say ask now, because now I'm going on to on-brand benefits, which is kind of different.
Okay, okay. So this schema or format,
Yeah,
was that theirs, or is this something that you guys worked together to develop?
this is something that we work together to develop. So like
Okay.
we have a schema like this that's for your whole brand being. I don't know if you've ever seen that, but it's like a house.
Uh-huh.
But this
Okay.
was specifically for them. So like for example, the foundation of pillars, that's not something we typically have.
Okay.
But
So
because it was critical to speak to virtual while also making sure that it wasn't the lead, right?
so in other words, like in their work with you, it's different than maybe the typical work that you would do with someone, is that they want you to really dig into their personality and crafting their culture and all that kind of stuff in a way that your average company wouldn't.
Yeah. But that's
I mean,
pretty
that's
typical of
awesome.
brand. Yeah. Now, what do you mean as a normal typical brand wouldn't? What, say the last part again?
Well, it just seems like they're putting a ton of effort into this, where your average engagement with a client wouldn't go this deep. It wouldn't grind this hard. It wouldn't do this much soul searching.
For employer brand, it really does.
Okay.
Because you
Okay.
are trying to identify, how you're going to attract world-class talent. So like I would say it does, and I mean I think brand heart goes really deep,
Right.
typically anyway, for everybody we work with.
Right.
So
But
like
this seems
what,
like
say more about what you mean. I think I'm just not understanding it.
well, I just think this seems like it's a whole nother level, which is good, but it, but it, here's the thing. It seems like you're weaving it into their branding and how it's going to exemplify itself out, like in images and that kind of stuff. Whereas this might be something that like an HR shop would normally take on and
Oh,
say, we're going to dig into this because we want to shape our culture.
okay, totally. And what's really interesting about talent brand, like have you ever heard that term before? I had never heard that term before, but it's becoming more and more common that there is a talent brand team. You can think of that as the bridge between HR and marketing.
Okay. Okay. That totally makes sense.
So HR might be like, here are all the things we're doing to support the actual culture we want to build. Now, how do we communicate about it?
Okay, okay, okay. That helps then, because then you're on more of the communication side.
Oh, 100% of the communication side. And also
Okay,
then what's the narrative? Like imagine, I think this is a great question. Imagine if there was no narrative
right.
that was agreed upon by marketing and an executive, of course, and HR. You can imagine that a lot of people would lead with we're virtual first because it's a pretty juicy point of difference, right? You can work from anywhere in the world for us, and you're going to make fantastic salaries and have fantastic benefits because we're a world-class tech operation.
Well, the other thing is if it's not articulated like this, then there's like 50 different narratives or 100 different narratives in everybody's head.
Exactly. And then you're not consistent. So what one
Right.
person, one recruiter might speak differently than
Oh,
another.
absolutely.
Or even all
Absolutely.
the advertising and the marketing for job postings aren't consistent. Honestly, a lot of our work, Dad, or Steve, Steve is my dad. I think that that is something that we have talked about. That line we use all the time is we're not here to change how the world sees you. We're here to change how you see yourself. This internal alignment from this 4,000 person company about who they are and who they want to be is such a critical component.
Oh, absolutely. But what I'm saying is that that then becomes the day-to-day role of a whole nother group that have to manage that and reinforce it and bake it into their evaluations and bake it into their
Oh,
feedback, you know. So
totally.
you're
Which would be
just
way more your realm than mine.
yeah, yeah.
Mhm.
This is the communications piece that but then forcing them to identify it so they can tie it to their brand seems to me to be like a fairly new twist.
Yes. Yes.
Okay.
Forcing people to identify and to also get on the same page about it is like where most of the hard work is.
Well, you really want it you want somebody to internalize it. You want
Yeah.
this to be internal to the HR people so that what flows out of their fingers in an email or in an announcement is this, that it's all rooted in this. So there's probably some key players, what do they call it? Stakeholders who you have to really, really train a ton in this, as opposed to having like a team of people who's the brand police, the EVP police, you know,
Yes. And
and
this
every single
is
person needs to be on it.
this had to
Well,
go through many layers of executive approval because of how much this would affect, the rollout of like for example, the community thing is really interesting, right? At one point it was diversity, then it became belonging, then it became community.
right. See, okay, so this is my insight, and sorry to take up so much time, but this I think is critical because of, I'm just thinking even the jobs that we're on right now. By continuing to focus them and make them think about how they're going to communicate it, it continues to drive the message deeper and then also gives them something that they can all consistently act on, like Beth just said. In other words, we're going to keep drilling down on this instead of some vague terms like authenticity or like
Yes.
value product or whatever. We're going to just keep grinding until we agree on certain language and agree on certain concepts. And then we are going to use that whenever we're talking about ourselves, to ourselves and to our customers. Am I getting
Exactly.
it? Okay.
And I can't say enough how critical it is. I think that this gets to one page, which is really tough to get
hmm
alignment on
hmm
words that will fit on one page.
Yeah. No, I mean, otherwise it gets too funky and too wordy and all that. Anyway,
And
okay.
then everybody kind of gets to put in their thing and feel happy.
Yeah,
We don't
yeah,
actually
yeah. I mean,
have
if
to,
you have like, yeah, you have like 20 narratives and you have none.
right, like a buffet versus like, hey, one meal. This is the meal we all agreed on, you know.
Yep. Yeah.
So,
No, okay. Well, sorry to everybody I'm dragging this out, but I really think it locks in something special because you're forcing people to boil it down so they can simply communicate it.
oh yeah, and this is a very short presentation, so we have plenty of time. Because the other thing that I wanted to talk about that I think is so cool, and this is tougher with a large organization. So like this is tough for Dropbox, right? Although Dropbox does have some really unique benefits, like they specifically lean into egg freezing, things that are more I would say specific to like a tech environment, but they're taking a lot of cues, I would say, from their competition. What
Hmm.
I think is really cool about a small business, so probably not who you're talking to, Dad, and the people that you're working with. Like, this is probably a gargantuan task to talk about benefits at an organization like a university, but it is a very cool opportunity for people like me and Beth who can say, what benefits can we offer that are unique and like almost proprietary to here? So, because the way that I craft my benefits signals to people who I am, because I'm like, what better way to walk the talk than to put resources behind it? So,
Hmm.
they should feel proprietary, they should reinforce your values, and they help you stand out. So, it's an ecosystem of benefits that make it hard to leave. Because you can, in a small business environment, you can almost always get paid better somewhere else. Actually, I mean, and I know I have people who are like, I work twice as hard for less money here than I
Hmm.
did at a large organization. I think that's just like small business world, right? So what am
Hmm.
I offering them to make this at all attractive? And I think that the brands that you know are doing this. So just as a quick overview, Hoot, some of the stuff we do at Hoot, life support, very unique. We offer you up to $250 a month for anything that allows you to buy back your time. You have to show us your receipts. It's not a bonus. Because we employ mostly women and women statistically take on more at home, giving them more free time to come back to the office more refreshed is a huge benefit. So I have people that have never had a house cleaner in their life who now have a house cleaner. People who've never had yard work done for them now are doing that. Meal prep, things like that. Mental health, because we believe in mental health. That's a transformative benefit. We're going to pay for 50% no matter what the cost. You know, we have had people in crisis who are running up pretty big tabs. No problem. We have your back. We're going to pay 50% of mental health. Maternity leave. Beth knows this is such a challenge. So does my dad. But it's obviously something we believe in enough to endure the pain of the cost of supporting a maternity leave and the covering your workload while you're gone. Bring your baby to work. It's very hard to leave a 12-week-old baby. This office actually, I think this has been like a bright spot is even when people bring their new baby in, it's a bonding experience for all of us. And then obviously my son's sitting in this room right now. Any kid is welcome here at all times, you know, when it's necessary. We want that to be normalized for this year for the first time supplemental daycare. So daycare is more expensive than your mortgage in all 50 states. It keeps many women out of the workforce. So you can see who just continues to double down on what we believe in and to put resources behind it. I grabbed some examples of big companies that you've heard of that just try to think outside the box. You know, Patagonia, obviously well known for being an incredible employer. Here are some of the things that they're doing. On-site childcare, I looked into that pretty heavily, and it's a beast to take on the the liability for it. But I mean, what a game changer. Airbnb had some really interesting, you know, you can imagine they're making sure that people can travel, work from anywhere policies. Um,
Hmm.
Sweetgreen, I thought this was interesting. I mean, it's not surprising that they're like giving their people food, but this whole like community supported agriculture where you get to volunteer time. I mean, that's definitely walking the talk as far as what they want to see their people investing in.
Hmm.
And then I thought this was really interesting from Etsy. I mean, also on brand. Teaching, learning crafts. Beth, you would be right at home here.
You get a craft supply stipend.
Your
That's,
dream.
yeah, it is.
And then maker spaces in their office. It's like the type of thing, it's like, that is not hard.
Yeah.
But what a difference that might make to employees who feel like I belong at Etsy because of these types of benefits. Uh, Adobe, again, I mean, I'm sure you guys have heard Google does that crazy program. Now, this would be outrageously expensive to me, but like giving you 20% of your time to invest in like your side projects. Some of those side projects have turned into things like Gmail. Some of their most innovative products have come from their own people being able to set aside 20% of their time to work on what fills their cup, which I would love something like that. Feels very expensive. But again, you can do that when you're Google, right?
Mm-hmm.
Zappos has such a great identity, and I'm actually curious about how this has gone since they lost their founder. But they were very well known. I mean, they were purchased by Amazon, but prior to that, they were well known for being an incredible employer and really turning that industry on its head by offering, by bringing in people who were super passionate about what they were doing there. Okay, and then here's that workbook I talked about where this is very easy you can go directly using this QR code, but it's also on the homepage of our website. It's all over our website to be able to download this free workbook, which walks you through building the brand being. And that is an essential part to like, I would recommend anybody does that before they get into, okay, now I need an employer brand. That should be first. Or an employer value proposition. So any questions? I mean, we have tons of time. So
Listen, I would also say that like the opposite of what you're the fails on the brand are like last year for Christmas, I had my admin assistant who's not local, she's virtual, come up with like holiday gifts for the employees. And she was like, I think like face masks and
yeah.
I own a warehouse. I mean, I have other companies and I have just a really, really diverse group of people socioeconomically because, in a warehouse, it's just a different kind of person sometimes. And I was like, no, it's not that they wouldn't be okay with that. It's just like, it's so clear that we don't know who they are and what they like, like it's
Yeah.
so clear that the person picking out the gift is not in the warehouse hearing everybody talk about their sports teams on the weekends and
They're out of touch then.
yeah, it's almost more damaging.
I
I just
totally
opted to,
agree.
I was like, let's just do Walmart gift cards because, because I didn't
Totally.
have time for it. But if we had something like this, like a, something to rally around, that we're like, okay, this makes sense. Like they all love clothing. Like they get really excited when we give shirts or sweatshirts and hats and stuff. And they also like just culturally, they all wear. One of my employees has this shirt that's like a memorial to his cousin. It's got
Yeah.
graphics all over, like pictures of his cousin and his cousin's truck and stuff. And he loves that. And he's
Yeah.
a really like cool, stylish guy. So I'm like, okay, so they like custom stuff. Maybe we need to embroider their name on it. Or
Yeah.
he's actually the shipping lead for my bandana company. So I'm gonna make him a shirt and embroider his face on his shirt. And like, you know, they just feel so seen and cared. They feel so cared for when they
Good.
feel seen. And the opposite of it, is not good. Like my first job, they're like, okay, everybody's gonna get polos with with the embroidery and khaki pants. And I was like, are you fucking kidding me? I'm not wearing that.
Yeah. Absolutely. That's really well said, that I think it's worse. I say
Yes.
it's worse to be way out of touch than to do something a little bit more generic like Walmart gift cards.
Right.
I would say still feels on brand.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Kristen, I love that. My name's well, it's Elizabeth, but I go by Izzy. But I work in
Hi.
human resources, and I'm here in Columbia, but I work for a firm out of New Jersey, and we have employees in 29 states. So we are spread out from a remote capacity. But I love your all's benefit, and I saw you talk on Carrie's
Oh,
webinar a couple of
yeah.
weeks ago. And I love your benefit of paying for the things that help employees, like the housekeepers, the things that take things off their plate, because it's so important for people just to be able to focus on work and life. And, everybody used to call it like work-life balance. Like, no, it's just life balance. Like work is
Yeah.
part of your life, right? Like there's no
Totally.
work and life. Like it's all just kind of comes together, especially I think in remote environments, it's very hard to separate the two.
Yes.
So yeah, just in Beth, what you said too, it's like thinking about what employees like thinking about their personalities and what they like, right? Like you could add another PTO day and you can add some of those things, but at the end of the day, like it's just kind of like, all right, again, it's what sets you apart that's different than others. My sister-in-law is a greeting card designer at Hallmark, and they do creative days. So they, outside of like their vacation, they give them creative days that they can then use, but they have to do something creative, right? Like they have to go to the Walt Disney Museum or,
Oh, so cool.
go somewhere that just takes their mind in a different spot than just like taking a PTO day and cleaning your house. So, yeah, I think it's just thinking outside the box, but thinking about who your brand is as well. But I love the creative ideas from an HR and employee standpoint.
I was gonna say, Izzy, I would love to hear your feedback on like, because HR, like I was saying before, I think this is the fact that Dropbox has this talent brand team, which is the bridge
Yeah.
between HR and marketing. Have you guys seen more of that happening because I think that's like, it's hard to be like, hey, HR, you're
Yeah.
not good at marketing. It's like, yeah, we never said we were.
Yeah. And yeah, exactly. I had that we call them rocks because we run an EOS model, but I had that as a rock for several quarters was HR marketing because it's so important this day and age to attract the right talent, right? And who you want. I think that, one of the things we run into is, like promoting our employees and the good things that they're doing. Because what we find is you want to do that, but you also don't want other people to steal your employees. Because all of a
Yeah.
sudden you're promoting all these great things and they're like, oh, Kristen did X, Y, and Z. Like, let's go take her, right? So it's that fine balance also of, how do you get that information out about the great things your company is doing and the great things your employees are doing to attract the talent, but also not losing the talent. So, but it's so important. I think,
Yeah.
especially in a remote environment too, we get like 400 or 500 applications in like 4 days. Yeah,
Yeah.
it's crazy. And so, but trying to figure out like who actually fits
Yes.
company from the get-go. So how do you put that information out there that when you're also talking to them in the interviews, you understand like what have they actually learned about your company, not just, oh, I'm applying for jobs because I'm always looking. Okay, well, that's not the people we want.
Totally.
So, but if they are like, oh, I found this on your website and I appreciate the culture that you had, like, that HR marketing is working. And those are the people that you actually want on your team.
One thing that we have done is we do create brand advocates. So when we're working with
Yeah.
someone externally and they're marketing themselves, we create brand advocates and we even create like a story. How did they find us? Why do they love us? Why are they telling their friends? We do that with employee advocates as well. Now it's way more touchy, like we don't identify a gender and age, but it's more about what is the value system. So, like, I
Yeah.
don't know if you've ever heard the term psychographics, but like,
Yeah.
what keeps them up at night? What are the type of insights that we can draw about our people? So, like, for example, Dropbox developers, this is a really unique insight that we can kind of like specifically go after people knowing that Dropbox developers are often into high intensity passions in their free time. They do
Mhm.
Ironmans, they do races, they create they're like doubling down on things that have almost this like competitive element to them. Like
Mhm.
high performers, basically. So then, how do we show up in places where those people are? Totally independent of like whether they're male, female, 35, 55, but the kind of things that drive them, I think is really, really important.
Yeah. Yeah. I love that. I love that. Yeah.
One
I
thing
think,
oh, go ahead.
no, yeah, I was just going to say, it's definitely, I think a lot of companies miss the boat on partnering with marketing from the HR standpoint.
Yeah.
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 Yeah. Because we're not marketers in HR. I mean,
Right.
we're a lot of things, but marketers are usually not one of
And
them.
I think you're seeing a little bit more of this too with like people teams. Do you guys have like a people team?
No, we only have two of us. So there's only myself as VP of HR, and then I have an HR business partner. So,
Mhm.
but we're doing all the things, payroll, benefits, recruiting,
Yeah.
so it's like when you're focused on that, you have just this sliver of time. Like I don't have somebody specialized right now in just recruiting. I did up until a couple months ago, but you have to have the time. And a lot of times in HR world, you're doing all of the things. You have like, here's your 4 hour window for the week. And so you just, I hate to say like do the bare minimum, but it's just like, I've got time for interviews. I got time to look at resumes. I don't have time to like spend on putting out more information on the brand externally, right? You
For
do it
sure.
internally, but I think a lot of companies miss that external piece of it.
One thing I would tell you that I think this process is totally transformational for, and has really only happened in the last year or so, is that when you create this, like, we create a whole manual, but even if you just have that one pager
Yeah.
and you upload that to Claude, it can
Mhm.
explode your productivity. The problem is when you don't take the time to do that upfront work to get alignment from your organization on who we are, and that is the hard part. That's the really hard part. The
Mhm.
doing should feel fairly easy on the
Mhm.
other side of identifying the being, which is
Yeah.
super hard. Like, this whole exercise for Dropbox to say we're not going to lead with virtual first. That took lots of arguing among
Mhm.
them to decide that, like, we don't want to lead, we don't want to attract. It's very important to us that we're not attracting people who think that that's the most important thing about their employer, is that it allows them to be virtual. So
Mhm.
I just can't emphasize enough. Once you get this alignment, I think that you could move fairly quickly with production,
Mhm.
once you get over the hump of the alignment part, the being.
Yeah. Yeah, that's interesting with Dropbox not wanting to lead with virtual first. And it makes complete sense because we have candidates all the time that are like, I just want a remote job to have the flexibility. I'm like, yes, you do have the flexibility, but you also have to work, right?
Right. Right. Or people who say, like, I don't have childcare. I want to work with my child here. It's like, okay, hey now.
Yeah.
That's
Yeah.
probably not.
Yeah, remote work is not a substitution for childcare, right? Like it goes hand in hand, right? And like you said, there are days that like, okay, your kid's at home because they're
Totally.
sick or spring break or whatever, but yeah, it's trying to figure out that balance, especially in a remote and virtual environment of yes, you do have the flexibility to work remote, but that's not necessarily what this is all about. You still have a job to do. So yeah, how do
Right.
you market that? But that's interesting with Dropbox. I'll have to look more at that.
Yeah. And like controlling that narrative is, I
Mhm.
think, what, the like first effort here, align on the narrative, then start communicating that narrative all from the same basis point versus, shooting off in different directions. I think that's like the more, we've gotten so fast, like everyone can operate so fast now. I think this is one of our main challenges in work and in society as a whole, is like pause to take the time to identify what
Yeah.
we actually are doing here. And like I was saying, like, there is no right or wrong way. Like, you can say we're a grind factory,
Mhm.
grind here 60 hours a week, you will see reward on the other side. It's like, okay, no shade,
Yeah. But you
as
got to
long
tell
as,
them up front.
yes, we were
Yeah.
intentional about that. Yeah. I
Mhm.
think the bait and switch is the absolute worst thing, and how damaging that is when we're talking about human beings, not just
Yeah.
buying a product that they feel like fell short, but like changing their lives to work for us, and
Mhm.
then feeling let down is, it's a big responsibility.
Yeah.
So,
Yeah.
anything else? We put all of our webinars on a page on our website, which I will send out to everybody. So you'll see this webinar, but all of our other ones too. And we've done a really deep dive on brand being up until this point this year, and how we create purpose and vision. We have very specific mechanisms for that. I really feel like that is a critical component here. Like, unless we know our North Star, we really can't do any of this doing stuff. We have to do that first. And again, that's a really hard thing to get alignment on,
Mhm.
that in itself. But our workbook talks about how we frame it up specifically. Like I had a great example of a purpose statement that someone gave me their vision. This was their vision. She was like, we want a waiting list. No, that's not a vision. Like that doesn't get anybody through the Sunday scaries, right? Is that your boss wants a waiting list? I mean, I want one too. None of my people are getting through a bad day, so who can have a waiting list, right? So really taking the time to sit and think about like what is the bigger thing that we're doing here? Is so worth the time investment.
And sometimes that's such a esoteric question.
Yeah.
Like my mentality even about why I even want to have employees at all is because I believe in like in fulfillment for people. Like I have a fulfillment warehouse, but I mean like personal fulfillment through work and
Yeah.
being able to come to work, do your best, and make a difference, no matter if you're sweeping the floor or if you're the CEO. Like to feel like what I'm doing is important. And is that like a good way to run a business? I don't know, but that's probably the most important thing about my warehouse business is that I have all these people who I think are just solid gold humans. I care about them a ton. And yeah, I can't pay them all a ton because that's just not the market that we're in. And my clients won't pay me so that I can pay them, but I can't pay them $100,000 a year. But I can improve their lives by paying them very fairly, don't get me wrong, and offering, but I'm not like trying to skate that, but I'm
Yeah.
paying better than McDonald's, but to also offer them benefits and also to say, hey, let me help you figure out how to use those benefits, you
Yeah.
know, and to make sure that every day they're not like, oh, I'm just another number. I'm just like cranking this stuff out. I
Right.
talk to them a ton about why what they're doing matters.
Yeah. And Beth, I think there's such an awesome story about how you specifically support small businesses and small makers.
Right.
So it's
Yeah.
like,
I
how
talked to
are
them. I
they
talked to the
contributing?
shippers about that. I
Right.
talked to them about that. Like, we saved her butt today. Thank you for taking
Yeah.
this to the FedEx after hours.
Right.
Yeah.
It's just that idea that like we're doing more than sweeping the floor, packing a box.
Right. Right.
But
Yeah. I don't have all the mechanisms in place. Like, I think I know what I want to convey, but how to do it, when to do it, should
mhm.
I have a bunch more meetings? Should we do lunch every week? I
Yeah.
remember I listened to a ton of Dave Ramsey stuff, and I don't love Dave Ramsey, but but when I was first starting out, like having employees, like in 2015, I read a bunch of his stuff about people and leadership of people, and I do really subscribe to a lot of his stuff about just making sure people understand that they're important and how you treat
Yeah.
them, and that's what matters.
I totally agree. Well, one thing we do with our brand being, and certainly I'm not saying we live this out perfectly. We'd have plenty of people who can tell you it's a mess here half the time, but we do 2 retreats a year, summer and winter, and we review our brand heart each time. Like, hopefully, they're living values and you're getting rated on your values twice a year as part of your biannual review. But even just reminding people what we're here to do, and like I know this has been a hard season or whatever. For us it's often just high levels of change, and that's something. Okay, so something that I deal with a lot is like it's inherent in an office of 15 people where we offer maternity leave. It's almost a constant change because someone's always coming in and out, and so reminding people why we do that and how important it is to our like long-term vision and of who we want to be in the world and who we want to be for is so important. It's like the game time locker room speech that is just necessary when it gets freaking hard to have the third maternity leave of the year.
Mm-hmm.
So knowing that stuff I think is so important. Yeah, Izzy?
Well, I was going to say, I think Beth hit it just right too. You have to also remind employees of the benefits you have, right?
Yeah.
It's one thing to put them out there once or put, who we are out there, but it's the constant reminder of these are the benefits that we have, or this is why we have these values, or this is why we do X, Y, and Z. Because a lot of times employees, we think that they'll go to the internet. We think that they'll go to
Yeah.
the office drive. They don't. They have no idea, right? And so it's so important to just every so often just remind them of a benefit that they have, or this is why, you know, somebody's on maternity leave and this is what we do for them, right? So
Totally.
I think that's a huge part of culture, but also building that brand of employees also being that ambassador for you out in the community as well.
I think that's such a good point. Even like Beth and I were talking early on, like, educating someone who might have never had financial education about a 401k. Like you said, they may not even know the benefits of this or they've never even heard of it.
Right.
Yeah. Or you talk about it in their onboarding on day one, and then you never talk about it again. And then they're like, oh, I forgot about that. And it's like, okay,
And you're like, what? Because you live it every day. Yeah.
yeah, yeah. Or like we have voluntary like critical illness and accident insurance. Well, there's like $150 wellness benefit. Like literally, if you go get your eye exam, they'll pay you $150. You submit the form. Employees don't even take advantage of it because they forget about it. So I'm constantly
Totally.
telling my team, like, send reminders, make sure they know, like, you literally just upload a document and you've paid for the benefit for the year. So it's, maybe $10 coming out of my paycheck, but then principal is giving me back 150. So it's a free
Totally.
benefit essentially, right? But employees just don't take advantage of those things or think to dive deeper
Oh,
into the things that are offered to them.
I have to hound people about that life support thing, which isn't that wild because it's free money. You don't even have to pay anything. But it's like people just don't remember or they don't, sometimes I think they're worthy, whatever.
Yeah, yeah.
And I do think it's another example of HR people not being marketing people. It's one thing to have the benefit. It's another thing to know how to talk about the benefit in a way that really takes
What?
advantage of those marketing concepts. So
Yeah.
if you have a value in your
The 7th
company
is
that's
what we said.
about
The
like,
due date is that day, but we said that we probably wouldn't send it out till after the 4th.
That works.
Is what it was. But the website has that as the date, so I kept that as the date.
Oh,
I think that was Shannon. I just muted her.
yeah.
Okay, sorry, Amy, you were saying like if you don't know how to communicate about the benefit.
yeah, like if one of your values in your company is, in your vision is about building for the future, you're building things for the future, you're about innovation for the future. Well, you can tie things like a 401k
Yeah.
into that because you can tie that into this marketing, some sort of marketing message about your 401k is for the future. Just like we are building for the future, you can be building for the future too, which is why we offer vesting and match. I mean, it's
Yes.
like tying those things together, but as HR people, we don't think like that. And so
That
it's like
is
just another opportunity to pull in some of those marketing ideas.
that is a fantastic point too of like, are we on, on story? Are we on brand? Are we pushing that narrative? I think that is a beautifully said point about like all of this stuff should be able to be woven together so that then they can share it, right? Like they can say like, yeah, I'm proud of my company. We're all about innovation. We even have, da da da. I think that's really well said. Instead of just like more compliance, like don't forget about your 401k. Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, for sure. Well, I would welcome to talk to anybody about, your specific needs or anything. If you want to reach out to me, yeah, I think everybody has my email, but also you can easily access that through our website. We would love to help any HR team. I think it is kind of the new frontier in, kind of talent brand, like I was saying, where recruitment and retention only become more important as the working world gets more and more bizarre, basically, is my feeling. So thank you guys all for coming so much. And like I said, I will post this. You will have access to it and all our other webinars as well. But really appreciate your participation today too.
All right.
Yeah. Thanks,
Bye-bye.
Good
Kristen.
job, Kristen. Thank you.
Thank you.